I was told there wouldn't be room this year. We're keeping it small, Mom, Joanna had said, voice sweet and clipped, like she was speaking to a child. It's just the kids and a few friends. You understand. I said I did. I lied. 3 days later, I saw the photos. Joanna had posted them on her Facebook. A dozen faces around the long mahogany table I bought for her as a housewarming gift. Turkey, stuffing, cranberry sauce, bottles of wine, laughter, candles. Not a single chair empty. Not a single one for me. I sat there in my kitchen, the screen lighting up my hands, heart pounding with something that wasn't sadness anymore. Not confusion, not shame. Just a quiet, heavy clarity. Like a window had finally been washed, and now I could see it all. I wasn't wanted there, not because there wasn't room, not because I wouldn't fit, but because I was an inconvenience. Too old, too slow, too much. My daughter didn't want me in her house on Thanksgiving, and that would have been the end of it. I would have sat quietly, again, if it weren't for that picture. The one where Joanna stood behind the turkey, carving knife in hand with her husband beside her and their children around her. Everyone smiling, and in the background, barely visible, stood my old white ceramic gravy boat. The one I gave her years ago, the one she'd said was too outdated to use. She was using it now, just without me. That was the moment it shifted. I closed the laptop, pushed my chair back, and sat in silence. The kind of silence that doesn't scream or ache. It listens. And in that silence, I heard every small dismissal I'd swallowed for years. Every unreturned call, every "we're just so busy," every gift unthanked, and every visit trimmed short. It all lined up like breadcrumbs leading right here. I wasn't just forgotten. I was excluded. At 78, you'd think I'd have thicker skin. Maybe I do. But that day, I felt something sharper than pain. I felt resolve. I've raised 2 children, buried a husband, run a household, paid bills with one hand, and held fevers with the other. I know what I'm worth. I've just let them forget. But I remember now. The kitchen clock ticked loud in the silence. The tea in my cup had gone cold. I got up, poured it out, and pulled out the notepad I kept in the drawer by the stove. The one I used to write grocery lists and doctor appointments. Today, I used it differently. 1 page. What I gave. Another. What I got. And below that, what ends today. The pen didn't shake in my hand. I wasn't planning revenge. I wasn't planning anything dramatic. No confrontations, no screaming. That's not my style. But I was done pretending. Done accommodating. Done making myself small so they could stretch out without guilt. This house, this small, tidy place where I'd lived since Thomas passed, it held every good part of me. But lately, I'd made it into a waiting room. Waiting for calls. For invitations. For crumbs of love disguised as duty. Not anymore. I sat back down and looked at the list. The second page was blank. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was crying. I didn't cry. I just thought. Lay there under the old quilt Thomas and I picked out 40 years ago, listening to the radiator hiss and the wind press against the windows. And I thought. I thought about every Thanksgiving I'd hosted when the kids were small. The turkey that never cooked evenly. Joanna sneaking marshmallows off the sweet potatoes. Henry throwing peas across the table and blaming the dog. I remembered the mess, the noise, the chaos that once felt like a full life. And now, silence. In the morning, I put on my robe, made coffee, and sat with the notepad again. The pages were still there. What I gave. What I got. What ends today. I filled in the first page easily, What I gave: $18,000 for Joanna's kitchen remodel. Just until we sell the condo, Mom. $3,200 toward Henry's failed real estate license. I just need one more chance. 6 years of after-school pickups when the babysitter flaked. All birthdays remembered, all holidays baked for my mother's wedding china. Passed down and never returned. The second page took longer. What did I get? What I got: silence when I was sick, excuses when I wanted company. A yearly call on my birthday, if that were keeping it small. I set the pen down. My hand didn't tremble. I wasn't angry. Not exactly. I was done being angry. I was just awake. When the phone rang, I almost didn't answer. But it was June, my neighbor, widow, kind eyes, too many cats. "Hi, honey," she said. "I just made cranberry bread. Thought you might like a slice." I hesitated. I'd love some. We sat at my kitchen table. She wore a pink cardigan with a missing button. I poured tea. We didn't talk about Thanksgiving at first, just the garden, the wind, her damn cats. But she was watching me. And finally, she said, "You look like someone who's been stepped on too many times." I smiled. "You're not wrong." She reached for her bread. "You know what I did the year my youngest didn't invite me to Christmas? I changed my will, donated everything to the library, even the jewelry, left a note in the safe. You should have read to me when I was still alive." I laughed, despite myself. She looked at me sharply. "I'm serious, Carolyn. They treat you like an obligation now? You stop giving like you owe them something." I didn't argue. I just listened. Because June was right. After she left, I stood in the doorway and looked around the house. Everything I'd built, everything I'd kept. Photographs on the walls, some framed, some curling. Henry at prom. Joanna in her cap and gown. Thomas with his arm around me, smiling like he knew a secret. I walked to the old desk in the corner. It still smelled like cedar. Inside was the envelope, the one with all the statements, receipts, passwords. Everything they'd need when I was gone. I pulled it out, tore it in half. Then I opened my laptop and logged into my accounts: bank, insurance, utilities. I started small. Unsubscribed Joanna's autopay for her electric bill. That was still linked from last year when she couldn't figure out how to switch providers. Next, the automatic transfer to Henry. Monthly, $600. Canceled. Each click felt like lifting a stone off my back. By evening, I had a new page in the notepad. What begins today: my decisions, my money, my rules. I set it down gently and picked up the phone. Not to call them, not yet. I called Nancy, my lawyer. Nancy Stillwell had been my lawyer for more than 20 years. She handled Thomas's probate when he passed, and later, my estate plan. She was younger than me by a good bit, but sharp as a tack, and never once talked down to me. Which is more than I could say for my own daughter. I called her office at 10 sharp the next morning. The receptionist remembered my name and said Nancy would call back within the hour. She did. "Carolyn," she said warmly, "it's been a while." "I need to make some changes," I said. "To the will and to my accounts." She didn't ask why, just said, "Can you come in this afternoon?" I was at her office by 3. The room hadn't changed. Soft yellow walls, heavy wood desk, certificates on the wall. I sat in the chair opposite hers, folded my hands, and told her everything. Not every little word, but enough. The Thanksgiving that wasn't. The gravy boat in the photos. The quiet realization that I'd become an accessory in my children's lives, not a person. Nancy listened without interruption. When I finished, she nodded. "You want to remove them?" I thought for a moment. "No," I said. "I want to remind them." She raised an eyebrow. I want to create a trust. For my granddaughter, Becca. She's the only one who visits, who calls, who sees me. I want her to have something that can't be taken or argued. And I want the rest put on hold. Until further notice. Nancy smiled, not smugly, kindly. We can do that. We went through the paperwork. I signed forms to pause all distributions, to revoke the durable powers of Attorney Henry and Joanna. Both had begged me to sign 5 years ago. I set a new provision in the will. Nothing for anyone who hadn't spoken to me in the last 12 months. Nancy looked at me carefully. Are you sure you want to be this clear? Yes. She nodded, gathered the pages, and stood. Carolyn, I've worked with a lot of women in your shoes. Most stay quiet. You're the exception. I smiled. Not anymore. When I got home, the house felt different. Not warmer, not yet, but lighter. Like something had shifted. I made myself soup, turned on the radio, and sat down with my notepad again. The phone rang around 7. Becca. Hi, Gran. I smiled, just hearing her voice. Hi, sweetheart. I stopped by Mom's today. She seemed off. Said something about you taking things too personally. Did she? Yeah. Then Henry said you were acting unreasonable. He was talking to Mom in the kitchen. I don't think he knew I heard. I stirred my soup. Gran, she continued, voice quieter now. Did something happen? Yes, I said calmly. I saw the pictures. There was a pause. Oh, I wasn't invited. I didn't know, she said quickly. I swear. Mom told me you were visiting someone in Vermont. She said you'd planned something quiet. That's what she told you. I'm so sorry, Gran. I would never have gone if I knew. I know that. Becca hesitated. Is there anything I can do? I looked at the window, at the dark beyond it, at the old oak tree swaying in the wind. You're already doing it, I said. You're here. And she was? She always had been. We talked for 20 minutes. She told me about school, about the stray cat she was thinking of adopting. When we hung up, I sat in the quiet and let it settle. I didn't need the whole family to come running. I didn't need groveling or letters or even apologies, though an apology would have been nice. What I needed, I realized, was to no longer be silent about what I'd allowed. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. Not from worry, from purpose. I made coffee, skipped the toast, and took out the folder from the drawer near the phone. It had grown fat over the years. Receipts, letters, scans of checks, all the things I never threw away because some part of me suspected I'd need them one day. That day had come. I spread them out on the table, each one a little reminder of how much I had given. Not just money, my time, my patience, my silence. The check for Joanna's dental work. Not the kind that fixes pain, but the kind that reshapes the jawline for confidence. $5,000. I remember the day she asked. She'd called me Mommy in that sweet, girlish voice she only used when she wanted something. I hadn't heard it since. The invoice for Henry's landscaping bill. A mess of a backyard he never finished. Another $2,000. The bank statement with automatic transfers I'd forgotten about. Small monthly amounts for things they'd long stopped acknowledging. Joanna's magazine subscription. Henry's pet insurance. I highlighted each one and marked them. Canceled. By noon, I was at the credit union, sitting across from a boy who looked too young to shave, but wore a tie like it mattered. He smiled too wide when I sat down until I placed the file in front of him. I want to suspend every outgoing transfer and recurring payment, and I want to revoke all shared access. He blinked. Shared with whom? I gave him the names. He hesitated, then tapped on his keyboard. I watched the screen flash as lines of data flew by. "You've got 17 recurring arrangements," he said finally, "including joint access on the family account." "Not anymore." I signed what needed signing. The boy cleared his throat. "Mrs. Mercer, just making sure. Your daughter and son will be notified when their transfers fail. Are you prepared for the consequences?" "I'm 78, I said. "I've lived through 2 recessions, a war, and losing the love of my life. I can handle a phone call." He nodded. I left the bank with a folder of printed confirmations. Outside, the air was crisp. Winter had set in, quiet and cold. I pulled my coat tighter and walked slowly home, stopping to look at the small bookstore where Thomas used to buy me novels. The window display had changed. So had I. Back at the house, I opened the front door to the familiar creak and set the papers on the kitchen counter. Let them call. Let them be surprised. It was time I stopped paying for my own neglect. That afternoon, the first voicemail came. "Mom, hey, it's Henry. There's something wrong with the water bill. It bounced or something? I'm not sure. Can you call me?" I didn't. Later, another message. Joanna. "Mom, hi. Just wondering if you changed something on the electric account. I think there was a mix-up. Anyway, give me a ring." I didn't. Instead, I made tea. Read a few pages of the book I'd been meaning to finish since summer. It felt strange, that kind of quiet. Strange and good. The phone buzzed again. This time, no voicemail, just a missed call. And another, and another. By evening, I turned the phone off altogether and placed it face down. I wasn't hiding. I was resting. From years of being available, of answering on the first ring, of giving before I was asked. When Becca stopped by later that evening, I told her what I'd done. She didn't look shocked, only said, "About time." Becca sat across from me with her hands wrapped around a chipped mug of peppermint tea. She didn't ask for details. She didn't need to. "You should have done this years ago," she said softly, almost as if afraid to sound too sure of it. "I know." She glanced around the kitchen, the yellowed wallpaper, the knotted curtain tie I never replaced. Her gaze stopped on the folder still lying open on the counter. "Is that all from them?" I nodded. "Just the money, not counting the other things." Becca leaned back. "Like the time Henry forgot your birthday. Or the time Aunt Joanna told people you were just a housewife. I remember that. I was 10. I looked at her. "You remember that?" "I remember everything. I just didn't know what to say then." We were quiet for a moment. Then I stood and opened the cupboard. From the top shelf, I pulled down an old tin box. One of the few things left from my mother. I hadn't opened it in years. Inside, clippings, old notes, savings bonds, and letters. Dozens of letters in Joanna's and Henry's handwriting from when they were younger. Letters asking for money, for help, for just this once. Becca took one and read aloud. "Mom, I know I messed up the lease. But if you could just co-sign again, I promise I won't let you down." She looked up at me. "Did he?" 3 months later, I had debt collectors calling the house. She put the letter down. "I hate that they did this to you." "They didn't do it all at once," I said. "That's the trick." It was slow. A little here, a little there. A favor, a rescue, a rewrite of memory. They stopped saying thank you, and I stopped noticing. Until now. Until now. Becca reached into her coat pocket and pulled out something folded. "I've been meaning to give you this." It was a flyer, an art class, Saturdays at the community center, for seniors. Oil painting, still life, No experience needed. The kind of thing I used to say I had no time for. I thought maybe you'd want to go. I looked at her, heart thick with gratitude. Thank you, I said. Yes, I think I'd like that. She smiled and drank the rest of her tea. After she left, I sat at the table long after dark, holding the flyer, staring at the letters. My life, in receipts and pleas. My kindness, itemized. My dignity, slowly bartered. But not anymore. At 10 o'clock, I turned my phone back on. 17 missed calls. 11 voicemails. The last one was from Joanna. Her voice, tight, controlled. Mom, this is getting ridiculous. Henry says you've frozen his account. Mine too. What's going on? If you're upset, fine. But this is immature. We need to talk. Call me. I didn't. I deleted it. Because this wasn't about upset feelings. It was about balance. And I was finally redistributing it. That night, I went to bed early. Not because I was tired, but because for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. I hadn't said a cruel word. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't burned a bridge. I had simply stepped off the one-way road they built and started walking in another direction. And I wasn't alone. Saturday came with a pale, forgiving sky and the quiet promise of nothing urgent. I hadn't had a morning like that in years. No errands, no lists, no nervous checking of the phone to see if someone needed something from me. Just the kettle humming, slippers soft on linoleum, and the echo of peace. Becca picked me up at 9:45 sharp. She wore that patchy green sweater she always loved and had paint smudged on her jeans before we even started. Ready to become an artist, Gran? I smiled. Ready to try. The community center was warm, a little too brightly lit, but it smelled of paper and coffee and quiet focus. A place where time moved slower. There were 10 of us in the class, mostly women, one soft-spoken man named Peter who did landscapes of Vermont. The instructor, Carla, had silver braids and soft hands. She passed out brushes like they were keys. We were told to paint something familiar, something that had stayed with us. I didn't think. My brush dipped into the soft blue without hesitation, then the beige. My hand moved before my mind could. An old chair. I painted Thomas's reading chair, the one that still sat in the corner of the living room, the cushion sunken just so. The chair no one else ever touched. The chair I'd nearly given to Henry last year when he needed something vintage for his new apartment. But I didn't. Thank God I didn't. Beside me, Becca was sketching a window view. Our backyard, I realized. The crooked tree, the rusted fence. It made something catch in my chest. Why that view? I asked her gently. She shrugged. It's where you always sit when I come over. I think it's my favorite view in the world. I couldn't answer that. Not out loud. After class, we walked to the cafe on the corner. 2 lattes, 1 cinnamon roll to split. We sat near the window, coats still on, and watched the street blur past. People rushing, arms full of packages. The season had shifted overnight. Everything felt a little more brittle, more urgent. Becca was looking at her phone, then quietly turned the screen toward me. Joanna posted again. A new photo. Their family around the fireplace. Matching flannel. A caption that read, "Family is everything." I looked at it. I didn't flinch. Henry liked it, Becca added almost apologetically. I sipped my coffee. They're not subtle, I said. No. And they're not sorry. No. But they're loud. That usually means afraid. Becca looked at me. I think they're realizing, I said, that for the first time in their lives, I'm not bending. Becca leaned forward, elbows on the table. If they come knocking, if they try to fix this, What are you going to do? I didn't answer right away. Outside, a mother was tying her son's scarf tighter. A cab honked. 2 teenagers ran past laughing. I'll listen, I said, but I won't forget. Becca nodded. Good. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small sketch pad. I made this last year. You never saw it. She handed it to me. It was full of drawings of my house, my kitchen, my tea mugs, my slippers, that crooked window, me. In every one of them, she had drawn me. I never wanted to forget you, she said softly, even when they tried to. The cinnamon roll between us went cold. Neither of us touched it. But for the first time in a long time, I felt full. They showed up on Sunday. No warning, no call. Just the low hum of an engine outside and the sound of heels on my front steps. A rhythm I hadn't heard in months, but recognized instantly. Joanna always walked like she had somewhere more important to be. I didn't move from my chair. A knock. Firm. 2 beats. I sipped my tea. Another knock. Then her voice. Mom, are you home? Of course I was. I always was. That was part of the problem, wasn't it? I waited a moment, then stood and opened the door. There she was. Hair perfect. Lipstick dark. A leather coat that probably cost more than my refrigerator. And behind her, Henry. Hands in pockets, trying to look casual, like this was all spontaneous. Can we come in? She asked, all sweet and controlled. I looked at them both, then stepped aside without a word. They sat on the couch. I didn't offer tea. Henry was the first to speak. Mom, we're worried. You've changed things. You mean I stopped paying your bills? Joanna cut in. That's not what we're saying. We noticed, and we think something might be going on. Emotionally. I almost laughed. Emotionally? Well, you've isolated yourself. Becca says you've been different. Becca. That was a move. Use the one person who still came around as leverage. I took a breath. Let me stop you there, I said calmly. You're not here because you're concerned about my emotional state. You're here because the money stopped. Joanna looked offended. That's not fair. Isn't it? Henry. When's the last time you called just to talk? He shifted. I've been busy. And you, I turned to Joanna, you told people I wasn't feeling well over Thanksgiving, that I needed rest. Meanwhile, there were 12 people at your table. Her jaw tightened. It wasn't personal. It was entirely personal. You used my things, my traditions, and cut me out of them. She looked down. Henry cleared his throat. Look, maybe we all made some mistakes. Maybe things got a little misunderstood. No, I said, voice steady. Not misunderstood, ignored, dismissed, taken for granted. Silence. Joanna finally spoke, quieter now. So what do you want, Mom? An apology? Is that what this is? I studied her. This woman I had raised. This woman who once cried in my arms over a scraped knee and now looked at me like I was a problem to solve. I want respect, I said. I want to stop being a background fixture in your lives, the one you only notice when something breaks. Henry looked down. Joanna crossed her arms. Well, she said coldly, if that's how you feel. It is. Then maybe we need space. I nodded. Take all the space you need. They stood. I didn't follow them to the door. Before leaving, Henry hesitated. You know we love you, right? I didn't answer. They left without another word. When the door clicked shut, I leaned against it and closed my eyes. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt clean. And that was enough. The silence after they left was thicker than usual, not heavy with guilt or regret. That part of me had gone quiet. It was just still. like the house was holding its breath, waiting to see if I would cave, if I would pick up the phone and apologize for having needs. I didn't. Instead, I went to my desk, pulled out the file folder Nancy had prepared, and began the next phase. There were still accounts in my name that needed closing, not just the obvious ones, the joint ones, the utility autopays, but deeper ones. Silent ties. The kind you forget exist because they've become so normal, so automatic. The emergency credit card in Henry's name, the shared health plan Joanna insisted I keep, just in case something ever happens and we need to handle things fast. The insurance policy I'd added her to as secondary contact when she was still trying to get approved for her first mortgage. I called the agencies one by one. Canceled, removed, rewrote. Some clerks were surprised, some were polite, some awkward, but I didn't owe them explanations. By the time I was done, it was nearly 4 o'clock. I made tea, sat on the porch. It had started to drizzle. Soft, cold, not enough to chase me inside. I pulled the blanket tighter and let the quiet settle into my bones. That's when the mail truck stopped in front of the house. Small envelope. Handwritten. No return address, but I knew that script. Joanna. I opened it with the same calm I'd signed the bank forms with. 1 page. Mom, I don't know what happened to you. I mean that honestly. You used to be kind, giving, quiet. Now you're angry, and I don't know why. If this is about Thanksgiving, I already explained it wasn't meant to hurt you. I thought you wanted rest. Henry said the same. You're acting like we stole something from you. We didn't. We're just trying to live our lives. I hope one day you remember how good things used to be and come back to the version of you we all loved. Joanna. I folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. That version of me. That version who wrote checks without asking questions. Who stayed home and stayed silent. Who let her kids host parties with her recipes and her china and left her name off the invitation. That version of me was gone, and in her place stood someone else. Still kind, still giving, but not invisible. Not anymore. I put the envelope in the drawer next to the folder and wrote 1 line on a new sheet of paper. You don't get to define the version of me you love. The storm didn't come right away. It built itself slowly, like weather in the distance. A tension in the air, a shift in the tone of voices. I knew it was coming the moment Becca called me on Monday evening, her voice uncertain. Gran, she said, have you checked your messages? No. I think you should. I didn't ask more. After we hung up, I turned my phone back on. 12 new voicemails. Most were short, terse. Then they turned sharp. Henry, first. Mom, the account's still frozen. You said this was temporary. Can you please call me? Then Joanna. I'm trying to stay calm, but this is getting out of hand. I had to cover the electric bill. You know we're not in a position to absorb these kinds of expenses right now. Then silence for 2 days. And then another burst. Joanna again. It's frankly unbelievable. You've made your point. Can we act like adults now? Henry. I just got declined for the apartment application. Remember the co-signature? They're saying you revoked it. I'm not sure what game you're playing, Mom, but it's getting really ugly. And finally, a text. From Joanna. Not a voicemail, just one message. If this is how you want to play it, fine. Just know we're telling the whole family what you've done. Everyone deserves to know what kind of person you've become. There it was. The pivot from confusion to blame. It didn't sting. Not in the way they'd hoped. I didn't feel ashamed. I felt awake. They'd built a version of me that was useful. The good mother, the good grandmother, the silent wallet in the background. And now, stripped of my compliance, they were scrambling to explain the absence of their safety net. I didn't reply. I didn't call. I did something better. I wrote a letter of my own. Not to them. To myself. To the woman I used to be. You did your best. You gave everything. You believed that love meant sacrifice, that family meant always saying yes. You carried birthdays, bought appliances, forgave rudeness, and smiled through exclusion. And they loved you, in the way people love comfort. Quietly and without gratitude. But you're not that woman anymore. You're not a door left unlocked, a checkbook left open, a seat quietly surrendered. You're not cruel. You're not vengeful. You're simply done. Done funding your own neglect. Done earning love that should have never needed purchase. Done being a story told only when it flatters someone else. I folded the letter and placed it in the top drawer of my desk. Not for anyone else to read, just for me. A page to hold the lines steady when the weather inside gets rough. Becca came over the next day. She brought tulips. From me, she said, not from them. She didn't ask if I'd heard from her parents. She knew. Instead, she handed me a new canvas, wrapped in brown paper. Thought you could use something fresh. I took it. Want to paint together this weekend? She asked. I nodded. I'd like that. We didn't talk about Henry or Joanna again that day. We made soup. We watched the rain. We painted a bowl of pears that came out lopsided but honest. It was more joy than I'd felt in months. Outside, the storm had started. Inside, I was still. And still was more than enough. The storm finally reached my door by Thursday. Not metaphorically, physically. It was Henry this time, alone, standing in the cold with his hands shoved deep in his coat pockets and that half-practiced expression of concern he used when he wanted to look noble. I saw him through the curtain before he knocked. I opened the door slowly. "Hi, Mom," he said. "Can we talk?" I didn't step aside. Not yet. He exhaled. "Look, I know this is uncomfortable, but things have gotten out of hand." I raised an eyebrow. "Things? You canceled the co-signature, the account access, the support I've depended on for years. You didn't even warn us. You just cut the cord." I didn't answer right away. I let the cold wind say what I wouldn't rush to. Eventually, I opened the door wider. "Come in." He stepped inside, shoulders tense. I led him to the living room but didn't offer coffee. He sat stiffly, like the couch offended him. "I'm not here to fight," he began. "I just want to understand." "No," I said, sitting across from him. "You want to negotiate." He blinked. "Is that such a bad thing?" "When it comes after decades of imbalance?" I said. "Yes." He leaned forward, his voice lower. "Mom, Joanna's furious. She's been telling everyone you're having some kind of breakdown, that you're being manipulated. She says Becca's feeding you stories." That made me sit back, calmly. "She thinks Becca is the problem? She says you've changed, that you've turned cold." "I've turned boundaries into actions," I said. "That's not cold. That's what happens when warmth is taken for granted." He rubbed his temples. "I just don't get why now. Why pull the rug out? What changed?" "You didn't invite me to Thanksgiving," I said simply. He looked up, startled. "We thought you were tired. You didn't ask." Silence. "Henry," I continued, "you've borrowed thousands from me over the years. Not once repaid. Not once asked how I was doing when you picked up a check. You showed up when it was convenient, when there was something to gain." He shifted uncomfortably. "That's not fair." "It's not untrue." He didn't argue that. You said you needed help building your future, I said, and I gave it. But the moment I needed dignity, not money, just dignity, you went silent. He stood up, pacing. So this is punishment? No, I said. It's a pause, a necessary one. He looked at me, really looked, and for a second something flickered in his face. Not quite shame, not quite sorrow, just recognition. That maybe, just maybe, I had stopped being the script he was used to reading from. He sighed. So what happens now? I live my life, I said. You live yours. If you want to build something real, not around guilt or fear or money, you know where to find me. But I'm not financing the illusion anymore. He opened his mouth, closed it, then nodded. Okay, he said. And for the first time in a very long time, he left without asking for anything. The door shut behind him, and the quiet it left was honest. The retaliation came on Sunday, not direct. That wasn't Joanna's style. No, hers was the curated cruelty of social appearances, the kind that bruised without fingerprints. It started with the family group email. Subject: clarity and concern. I hadn't seen that inbox light up in years, not since Thomas's funeral, when she coordinated casseroles like a corporate merger. Her message began warmly, almost deceptively. Hi everyone, I hope you're all enjoying the start of the season. I wanted to reach out not just as a daughter, but as someone genuinely concerned about Mom's well-being. She went on to describe my erratic behavior, my emotional withdrawal, and the undue influence of others, which was clearly a dig at Becca. She ended it with a masterstroke. We've tried to support her in every way possible, but as you all know, aging can bring confusion, and we may be seeing the early signs of decline. I sat at the kitchen table reading it in silence. Not rage, not disbelief. Just a deep, quiet sadness that she had gone this far to protect her version of the story. A few replies trickled in over the next hour. Mostly cousins and in-laws who hadn't spoken to me in years, now chiming in with polite concern, offers to check in or help if needed. Thinly veiled pity wrapped in digital smiles. But the message wasn't really for them. It was for me. It was a warning. Play along or we will define you as unstable. That's when I knew this wasn't about money anymore. It was about control. Joanna didn't just want support. She wanted the narrative. She wanted to be the daughter who cared for her aging mother while quietly managing her decline. The respectable woman holding the family together. And I, inconveniently, had stepped out of the role. I didn't reply to the thread. I picked up the phone and called Nancy. This is war, I said quietly. Then let's document everything, she replied. Every file, every change, every voice message. If they try to pursue anything legally, guardianship, asset interference, we'll be ready. I wasn't scared. I was insulted. That evening, Becca came over without saying a word. She walked into the kitchen, dropped her bag, and held up her phone. I saw the email. I figured. She has no shame, she muttered, pacing. No bottom. She's trying to regain control. Becca sat down. What do we do? I looked at her. My granddaughter. The only one who never asked for anything but time. We live, I said, and we keep receipts. Becca smiled at that. Later that night, I sat by the window and wrote another note to myself. They're building a version of you again. A confused woman. A fragile thing. Don't let them shrink you into their safety. Stay loud. Stay steady. Stay documented. I placed the note next to the others. They could build all the narratives they wanted. I had already reclaimed mine. On Tuesday, I received a letter in the mail. Not handwritten this time, not personal. Certified. Legal envelope. Joanna's return address, but her fingerprints weren't on it. This had a lawyer's tone. Cold, clean, and deliberate. Dear Mrs. Mercer, we are writing on behalf of Ms. Joanna Keller and Mr. Henry Mercer regarding recent financial decisions that have impacted their personal affairs. It has come to our attention that accounts and agreements previously considered stable have been altered or revoked without notice. This includes joint financial instruments, property arrangements, and access to resources historically shared within the family. We urge you to consider mediation to discuss a resolution. Should you decline, our clients reserve the right to explore legal avenues for restitution, including potential claims regarding elder instability or financial coercion. I read it once. Then again, they were threatening to take me to court, to declare me unstable, to undo every decision I'd made, not because I was incapable, but because I was inconvenient. I folded the letter neatly and placed it beside my tea. Then I called Nancy. I have a copy already, she said. They sent it to my office as well. What do we do? We let them try. There was a pause. I've seen this before, Carolyn. Children who grow used to their parents' money believe it belongs to them by default. But this is an empty threat. They're hoping to scare you into compliance, into returning to the role. What if they actually file something? We fight it. You're competent. You have documentation. I've already prepared statements. Psychological clearance if needed. Your accounts are in order. You've committed no fraud. They can't prove coercion because there is none. I exhaled. I'll draft a response, Nancy said. Simple, direct, and firm. And from here on out, no communication unless it's through counsel. Don't take their calls. Don't reply to messages. Let them talk to me. That was the first time anyone had said that to me. Let them talk to me. It felt like standing behind a locked door and finally hearing someone say, I've got this. When I hung up, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I baked. An old habit, yes, but not the way I used to. Not for guests or apologies or keeping the peace. I baked for me. Pumpkin bread, a little heavy on the nutmeg. As it cooled on the rack, I made tea and sat with the scent of it filling the house. No phone, no noise, just warmth. And in that stillness, I wrote another letter. This one wasn't to myself. It was to Becca. I didn't know if I'd ever give it to her, but I needed to say the words. Dear Becca, if you're reading this, something's happened. Maybe I'm gone. Maybe things have gotten messy. Maybe they've tried to turn this house into a battlefield. I need you to know. I saw you. Every visit, every call, every look where you chose compassion over comfort. You reminded me I was still a person, not just a purse or a burden or a memory waiting to fade. Everything I've done these last months, it wasn't rebellion. It was recovery. I was pulling pieces of myself out from under years of polite erasure. And you were the reason I believed I could. Whatever happens next, you have my trust. You have my love. And you have my permission to live without apology. To speak up when it's easier to stay quiet. To choose dignity over peace when peace requires your silence. You change the story. Don't ever forget that. Gran. I folded the letter and placed it inside the desk drawer, under the sketchpad Becca gave me. Outside, the sun was setting. A dusty pink sky that looked like watercolor, imperfect and alive. Let them sue. Let them shout. I'd already won. The silence didn't last. By Friday morning, the doorbell rang. It wasn't Henry this time. It wasn't Joanna. It was Marla, my niece from Michigan. Sweet girl once, but distant in recent years. She smiled tightly when I opened the door, coat still buttoned, as if she wasn't planning to stay long. "Aunt Carolyn," she said, "can we talk?" She was polite, cautious, like someone sent on assignment. I let her in. We sat in the living room. The couch between us felt wider than usual. "I don't want to get in the middle of anything," she started. "But I got Joanna's email, and then the lawyer letter." I waited. "She asked me to reach out, said maybe I could talk some sense into you, that you've always trusted me." That was the line. "You've always trusted me." It sounded less like comfort, more like leverage. Marla continued. "They think you've been misled, that Becca's been influencing your decisions." There it was again. Blame shifted onto the one person who stood by me. "They say you've cut everyone out, that you're acting out of character, that this," she gestured vaguely, "isn't like you." I looked at her, calmly, kindly. "Tell me, Marla, what exactly is like me?" She blinked. "Paying for Henry's rent? Letting Joanna speak to me like I'm a problem? Baking pies for a table I'm no longer invited to?" She looked down. "I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did. Not cruelly, not with intent. But you meant it. Because even you, someone who loves me, expected me to stay quiet. Stay kind. Stay convenient." Marla shifted in her seat. I leaned forward. "I'm not angry with you," I said. "But if you came here hoping to remind me who I used to be, you're too late. She's gone. And in her place is someone who remembers her worth." Marla was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked, "Why now?" A fair question. "Because they told me there was no room at Thanksgiving," I said. "And then I saw the pictures." Her face softened. "They didn't tell me that part." "They wouldn't." She nodded slowly, then looked around the house. The photos, the teacups, the chair no one else sat in. "I remember this place feeling warmer," she said, almost to herself. "It still is," I replied. "Just no longer for everyone." She stood. "I don't agree with how they've handled it, but I also know how stubborn Joanna is." "So do I." Marla hesitated at the door. "If they take this to court, they'll lose." She opened her mouth to argue, then thought better of it. On the porch before she left, she turned back. "Becca loves you fiercely," she said. "I didn't understand it until now. I hope you never forget it." She left without promising to call. That afternoon, Nancy called to update me. They'd backed off. No official filing, no suit, just posturing. "They wanted to see if you'd flinch," she said. "You didn't." "No," I said. "I didn't." Later, I sat at the kitchen table with Becca. She'd brought soup. We ate in easy silence, broken only by the occasional clink of spoons. "They're regrouping," she said. "Mom's quiet. Too quiet. They're out of moves." Becca smiled faintly. "You look tired, Gran." "I'm not." I looked at her, really looked. "You know what I am?" "What?" "Free." She reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm proud of you." "I'm proud of you more," I whispered. It's strange, the shape a life takes once the noise dies down. The days that followed were quiet. Not the hollow quiet of exclusion, but a gentler kind. A quiet with room to think, to breathe, to remember that peace isn't the absence of people. It's the absence of pretending. No more sudden texts, no vague accusations, no passive-aggressive voicemails about being concerned. Joanna and Henry had finally gone silent. They weren't done, of course. Just regrouping. But I wasn't waiting anymore. That Sunday morning, I put on a coat and walked to the cafe down the block. Alone, without an apology or a reason. I brought my sketch pad, the one Becca gave me. I ordered my tea, sat at the corner table near the window, and painted the scene outside. A woman walking her dog. 2 kids tossing snowballs too close to the sidewalk. A man in an old army jacket reading a paperback by the bench. The world was still turning. And I was still in it. Later that day, I stopped by the community center, signed up for a second art class, and dropped my name on a volunteer list for the library's winter reading program. They asked if I had transportation. I smiled and said, "I've got legs." It wasn't reinvention. It was return. Return to the woman I'd once buried under obligation and softness. The woman who used to sit on the porch reading mystery novels while the stew simmered. The woman who knew when to say yes and, more importantly, when to say nothing at all. When I got home that afternoon, Becca was sitting on my porch steps. She wasn't crying, but her face was flushed, angry. "They said I'm not welcome at Sunday dinner," she said before I could ask. "Who said?" "Mom. Dad. They said it's not punishment, but they think I've taken sides, that I've let you twist things." She looked at me, eyes burning. I didn't even argue. I just stood there. And then I left. "You did the right thing." "No, Gran, I should have shouted. I should have said something clever and sharp and, I don't know, powerful." "You did say something powerful," I said. "You left." She looked up, and her jaw trembled. "I don't want to lose them, but I'm not going to betray you just to stay in the room." "You're not losing anything," I said, brushing her hair from her cheek. "You're becoming." She stayed for dinner. We had soup and bread and orange slices for dessert. No centerpiece, no silverware, no speeches. Just 2 women at a quiet table, sharing the easiest kind of love. The kind that doesn't ask you to shrink. After she left, I sat at the desk and opened the drawer. I pulled out the letter I'd written to her weeks ago, the one she hadn't seen yet. I placed it in an envelope and wrote her name on the front. Then I added a small note. "For when you forget how strong you are." Outside, the wind picked up. I closed the window and pulled the blanket over my shoulders. The house didn't feel empty. It felt ready, not for visitors, not for apologies, but for whatever came next. They never called again, not to apologize, not to explain, not even to pretend. And I didn't chase them. Winter came in slow this year. No blizzards, no chaos. Just frost on the windows each morning and the kind of hush that settles over a neighborhood when everyone finally runs out of things to say. Becca kept coming by. We painted. We cooked. We talked. Not about the mess. Not about Joanna or Henry. About real things. Small joys. Future plans. The cat she wanted to adopt. The class I wanted to teach. The house filled again. Not with noise, but with presence. One morning, after shoveling the front path, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea. I watched a pair of crows fighting over something invisible. A man walked by and nodded, and I nodded back. And I realized no one owed me peace but me. All those years I thought I was holding the family together. I was just holding still while they pulled in every direction. All those holidays I said it's okay when I wasn't included. I was teaching them it was. All those times I gave without question, I was training them not to ask. And all that silence? It was mistaken for consent. But not anymore. This new version of life is smaller, quieter, but every part of it fits. Like a coat I thought I'd outgrown but was only wearing backwards. I look in the mirror now and see someone intact. Not spiteful, not vengeful, just whole. The phone is still in the kitchen. I still answer it, but only when I want to. I still bake, but the recipes are mine again. I still remember the faces around the Thanksgiving table, the one I wasn't invited to. But they don't ache anymore. They just remind me what I will never allow again. This house has room for visitors, but only those who bring warmth. This heart has room for family, but only those who arrive without conditions. So if you're reading this, and you've ever been told you were too sensitive, too dramatic, too much, listen to me. You're not. You were just noticing things others preferred you ignore. You were just expecting the love you gave to come back whole. You were just asking not to be erased. And if that makes you too much for them, then it's time to make space for yourself. Real space. Clear, clean, and without apology. The kind of space where you don't wait to be included. You build your own table, and you sit at the head of it, with your name in full, your voice unmuted, and your piece, finally, your own. If this story spoke to you, share it. If it reminded you of someone you love or someone you lost, send it to them. And if you're still sitting quietly at someone else's table, waiting for a seat, you don't have to wait anymore. Not one more day.